Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Hello and welcome to the IMS webinar series, and for some of you, welcome back. I am Aaron Blair, and I'll be your presenter for the entire 7-week series. I've been working with IMS and Retail Pro for the past 17 years, doing everything from project management to implementation to training. So far, we've covered e-commerce integration to Retail Pro in the first of our 7 different webinars. All of these webinars are focused on 3 areas: making money now during these unique times, getting things done while you have the time, and being ready to open back up, hopefully soon. So, what can you expect from these webinars? Well, first and foremost, you can expect the webinar right here and right now. At the end of the webinar, we'll be addressing questions, so please post them in the question section of your webinar control panel, and our moderators will organize them to be handled at the end during the Q&A. The webinar should run about 45 minutes to 1 hour, just depending on the quantity and depth of the questions that we get. Additionally, we'll be introducing polls throughout the session, and your participation is greatly appreciated. The polls are anonymous, and the results will only display as a percentage of the overall feedback. In fact, let's go ahead and do our first poll now. Since we're going to be talking about inventory, I want to get a good gauge of how often people are actually performing physical inventories throughout the year. So on your screen in front of you, you should see the poll question awaiting your input. So while we allow a minute for the responses, I just want to take this time to thank everyone for joining us today. We've had great interest in the series so far, and we really hope you enjoy the content. I know that personally I've enjoyed putting these together and interacting with many of you on a one-on-one basis throughout the process. I certainly enjoyed last week doing e-commerce, and I was very pleased with the level of attendance that we got, and the same is holding true today. We also really thank you for allowing IMS to be your trusted business partner. That is very important to us. As you know, we don't just sell Retail Pro, we work with you hand in hand throughout the entire life cycle. Okay, I see that most responses are in, so let's go ahead and close up that poll and let's show those results. Okay, so a pretty good number of you already doing physical inventory between an annual or regular spot checks, and that's great. Quarterly, monthly, maybe you didn't fall into any of those buckets, that's fine, but overall looks like we got some really good feedback that people are doing a physical inventory. And honestly, originally this webinar was going to be just about physical inventory and going through some of those aspects. But one of the things as we started to create the content is we said, you know, there's a lot more that we can cover when it comes to overall inventory management. So you're going to see a lot of different things today that we're going to cover at a high level, just to kind of give you an idea of what's available to you and what options you may have. Also, last housekeeping item, following each webinar, recording will be made available to those in attendance to share with other members of your team who were unable to attend. We're finalizing the delivery platform for the recordings, and they should be available by tomorrow. So all attendees from both webinars, today and last week, will receive a link to the recordings, as well as anyone who reached out to either myself or an account manager individually asking for the recordings. We will make sure that all those are available to you, and we will make sure to get those to you as quickly as we can. So before we talk about inventory, let's do a quick recap of last week's topic on e-commerce. We covered all the many reasons why you should be selling online. We looked at how Retail Pro and your website can work together, and we went through the options of setup at a high level. I know that many of you have already begun next steps, and we have actually done multiple follow-up demos this past week with our web team. So thank you to those folks who are interested, want to get going quickly and reached out to us. that we've been able to accommodate so far. And now that you're moving towards selling your products online, some of you are, we want to move into managing inventory because not only do you need to manage the online sales, of course that's important, but just as critical to your business is what you could be doing to manage everything else, especially now when you may be sitting on more product than expected. Hopefully we can get through this time, we can all resume business as normal, but for now, let's go forward and talk about some inventory. Today's webinar is so important because as a retailer, your inventory is the heart of your business. Being better at buying it, selling it, and managing it can be the difference between surviving and thriving in retail. The decisions you make can affect your margins, i.e. your profit, your shrink, and at the highest level, your overall bottom line. For all the years I've been doing this, always hear the same thing from customers. I just know my store and I know my inventory. Now, believe me, I'm not here to dispute that fact. You know your business better than anyone else. That's made you successful. But there are tools that can help you get to the next level, and that's what we want to talk about today. Because I don't think there's anyone who would disagree that if there was a way to make more money, reduce costs, and even cut the amount of time that you spend working, that might grab your attention. And that brings us into our specific topics for today. We're going to cover, again, at a high level, physical inventory and retail pro, which throughout this, you'll sometimes hear me refer to as a PI, some advanced inventory tools that are available to you, and we're going to touch on planning and open to buy, which I know is a topic that piques a lot of people's interest. Aside from the topics we're going to cover on Retail Pro features, I feel like I'd be remiss to not talk about shrink as part of an overall discussion on managing inventory. Just as we did last week with the e-commerce, give you a few interesting facts about shrink and some statistics from the National Retail Federation to get us started. I'm just going to read these off. According to the National Retail Federation, National Retail Security Survey they did in 2019, the average shrink rate in the retail industry is 1.38% of sales, which has stayed approximately the same for 4 or 5 years since 2014. While that may not sound like a lot, consider that shrinkage cost retailers more than $50.6 billion in losses in the year 2018. Therefore, if your store earned $1 million in sales with 50% gross margin, your shrinkage at just 2% costs you $10,000, which is significant. Survey also indicated that the retail landscape is changing, with more online shoppers bringing new challenges and fraud risk. So that links back to what we talked about last week with e-commerce and some of those additional challenges and risks. Those surveys indicated that their budget for loss prevention efforts will increase by 44.5%, with 68.2% of respondents saying they'll implement new technology as well as hire IT staff with strong analytical, cybersecurity, and investigative skills to help combat fraud. And I think it's important to point out the analytical and investigative, right? Because a lot of what we're talking about here today is information, getting more information about your inventory from Retail Pro, and that is one of the #1 things that you can do to combat shrink. Additionally, even though shrink is most often associated with theft, either internal or external, there are many points throughout the inventory life cycle where shrink can occur. In addition to theft, you have damages, donations, and items lost in transit. This is just an illustration to provide some methods to help reduce shrink, one of which we'll focus on today, physical inventory. The more you count, the more you know, and the more you can do something about it. Because as the bullet point at the top says, an accurate inventory can be the difference between profit and loss. So let's first look at methodology. Do you do your physical in-house with your employees, or do you hire an outside company, like Regis, for example? Certainly merits to both options, but the majority of feedback we get is that an internal physical is almost always more accurate. That's not to say inventory companies don't know what they're doing. After all, it's their business, but rather to say you have much more invested in your own merchandise. They are looking to count fast and move on to another store. Also of note are the different versions of Retail Pro you're operating on. I can see from the attendee list, we have a full mix of version 8, version 9, and Prism users. The process of a PI is different across all the versions, but it serves the same purpose, to count your inventory and see what your discrepancies are. The reason I bring this up is because many customers who have upgraded may simply not be aware of some new methods or features that they now have available to them in the PI tool in Retail Pro. And then next, we'll talk about scanners. Assuming that you're doing your own physical counts, you don't want to write them by hand, you have some options with scanners that we'll take a closer look at. Smart scanners and simple scanners are the two options. They can both speed up your counts tremendously, even assist you with other inventory tasks, but we'll get into those details in a few slides. While this is certainly not going to be a training session on doing a PI, I did want to highlight a few things as an overview to get us started. First, if you look at the add count screen on the left side, it's worth noting you have 3 different methods of adding items to a physical. You can add counts manually. Not to say that I think you should be manually doing a physical, but this is a useful tool, for example, for entering pre-counts. If you want to count sealed cases of product that you may have in storage before you do a PI, product that you know won't be touched or opened, manual entry is fast and simple for entering those counts. You can import counts from a CSV or any delimited file. So this applies to files from an outside inventory company. So Regis is going to provide you with a simple delimited file at the end that says, here are the barcodes and here are the counts. You can upload that into Retail Pro. It's actually a lot easier than you think if you've never done it. We'd be happy to show you how that process works. Lastly, the upload from a scanner. If you use scanners now, you know all about this. And if you decide to use scanners going forward, showing you how to do this in Retail Pro is part of the package from IMS. It would be scanners, setup, training, the full package to say you can now go use these to do your inventory tests. Now on the right side of the slide are 2 things. On the top is just a simple look at a PI in progress for anyone who's unfamiliar. It has your items with current Retail Pro on hand, the quantity scanned or imported or manually entered, and the discrepancy between them. In the end, we can also get reports to include discrepancy by quantity, by cost, by price. So all of that information is available to you to see at the end or at any point during your physical. Lastly, just below that is an image of 2 buttons that you may not be aware of. I have talked to many seasoned pros of the physical inventory module who did not know about these. And even if they knew that they were there, actually didn't know what they did. The options to update start quantity and update start cost allow you to do a physical inventory over time while still continuing normal operations. So you don't have to, say, shut the store down and count all night to be reopened the next day. These update buttons will take into account any inventory changes, so received product, sales, transfers, and adjustments from the time that you started your physical to right now. I know that some of this is basic to many of you, but I think it's important that we establish a foundation of the PI across our larger group of attendees here today. I also wanted to give you a glimpse of a PI in Prism, as there are many of you on version 8 and version 9. A Prism PI functions the same in the end, but like most things in Prism, the interface and navigation are clearly more modern and more updated overall look and feel. And in addition, on the right side is a preview of the RP Companion app that is available for Prism on any iOS device, such as the iPhone that a lot of you probably have with you right now. You can use the app to do several things, including a PI. Scanning can be done with a Bluetooth scanner or simply through the camera on your phone. If you didn't want to use your phone, there are other methods of using, say, an iPod or an iPhone with an integrated Cradle that has a scanner and some other functionality to it that we'd be happy to talk to you guys about. But more on that next week when we take a deeper look into Prism in our next webinar. Now let's talk about the hardware, starting with a smart scanner. This one here on the screen may look familiar to you. We also have options for Apple iOS devices as well as ruggedized Android devices. So what makes it smart? Well, the smart part comes from the Retail Pro software, because the scanner itself, as I said, is just an Apple or Android device. With this software, we can load a full copy of your Retail Pro inventory, giving you the ability to compare scanned barcodes to your database, eliminating errors. For example, if you scan a UPC by mistake instead of your Retail Pro barcode and tag, assuming you don't have the UPC loaded in Retail Pro, Scanner actually provides you live feedback to tell you that barcode is not in the system, versus having to go back through your store and figure out where that error occurred and get the right barcode. Additionally, this type of scanner stores all of your sessions, so the risk of lost data during a large PI is virtually eliminated. That means if I upload 10, 20, 100 sessions to Retail Pro, somehow my physical gets lost within the software, within my PC, I can simply import all of those sessions again. They're all stored on the device. And if you can see on your screen, I know the screenshot's a little hard to see, but the application also works for receiving, transfers in and out, inventory spot checks, and inventory lookup. The last two, it has the option to do because it has your database on the handheld itself. Plus, it's an Apple or an Android device, so you can use it for other applications outside of Retail Pro, like ShipStation, as an example from our webinar last week on e-commerce. So the Smart Scanner is simply one app out of many that you could have on that same device to make it a true multi-use device. Next, let's look at a simple scanner. A simple scanner does not have an application or inventory loaded on it. It's simply a data collector. Scan a barcode, stores the number. Unlike the Smart Scanner, it does not make you aware of errors because there's nothing for it to check against. Again, no inventory database. Also, it does not store sessions. So upon uploading your data to Retail Pro, you need to clear the device to begin a new session. Easy way of saying that, once the data is gone, it's gone. Now, simple scanners can also help with receiving and transfers, so the data from them can be uploaded onto Retail Pro documents, but the lack of inventory in the device does not allow you to do spot checks or inventory lookup. The scanner pictured here is a brand called Janum, and some of you may be familiar with Opticon scanners as well. Both are just examples of what a simple scanner could look like. Okay, so shifting from the PI to some of what I'll call advanced inventory tools. Let's start with another poll. Looking at the list in front of you, which I'll give you a minute to review, how familiar are you with these advanced tools? Now, keep in mind that some of these tools may not be available in your version of Retail Pro, or they may simply go by a different name. Okay, let's go ahead and open up that poll now. Just as before, on the screen in front of you should be a poll question awaiting your input. While we allow a minute for those responses, I will remind you of the tools that we're looking at today that this poll is referencing. We're going to cover stock audit, item history, item profile, and auto utilities. And the auto utilities cover auto min-max, auto PO, auto TO, and best replenishment. And we're going to take a quick look at sales targets as well. I also think while you guys are still answering the poll, it's important to mention a couple of other features, not for this webinar today, but ones that will be part of our upcoming episode. After we use all the advanced tools to figure out what we have, it's likely we may have dead stock that needs to move. So Retail Pro has the ability to manage markdowns and create a wide variety of promotions in order to help us move that stock. In fact, the promotions module in Prism, I think, is one of the highlights of that version, and I'm very excited for everyone to see that next week. Okay, let's take a look at the poll results. I would say I'm not totally surprised by this. I think there are a lot of advanced features that some people just are not using. Perhaps they don't know they're there, or they don't see how they would be of enough help to stop and learn. So 71% of responses, not at all, not very familiar with any of these, or maybe just one or two. And then about a quarter of people know of them, with a small percentage who do use them but not often, which I would take to mean that maybe they use a few, or they use a lot of them but only from time to time. All right. So getting right into the advanced features. Retail Pro, unlike many other systems, has a full stock audit feature when we start to talk about the information that we have available to us. From the time you create an item, everything about it is tracked. We can view the information at different levels, such as if you look down the left side, by vendor, by department, by attribute, by size, and all the way down to individual items. You can configure the view to arrange these dimensions in any order you like. So if you want to see size before attribute, so all the attributes rolled up underneath of each size, that's fine. You control the order of those dimensions. There's even rolled up totals available for you on the screen. So as I highlight on a specific vendor, you can see that those totals actually reflect just that vendor. This is a powerful tool as you get more and more control over your inventory, remembering that knowledge is power. And then at what I feel is a little bit deeper level, many users are also not too familiar with or don't utilize the full item history from inside of inventory. So I know many people run reports to see some of these metrics, but this can actually be done directly inside of Retail Pro. Shows you every receipt the item appeared on, what other items were present with it. So if we look at the top half of the screen, that's a list of receipts. On the bottom, as I would select through each receipt, it's actually showing me what items were together. So we can see that two of these women's t-shirts were purchased because I was doing a 50% off, buy one, get one 50 promotion. Again, we'll talk about that more next week in Prism. You can even view the individual documents if you look on the right side and go to them for review. So if I wanted to go to that specific receipt to see anything about it, I could do that just by clicking the go to document. And remember, directly from within inventory, there's no need to run reports to go get this information. And lastly, I think when we're talking about item history and details, I want to look at item profiles. This feature is available in version 9 in Prism, and it allows us to look at item KPIs, key performance indicators, such as our stock turn, our GMROI, and stock to sales ratio. You can also see things like end of period quantity, days of supply, last sold, last received, sell-through percentage, all the way across. There are additional fields that can be added to this, so there are plenty more available. And you can even see that I could add a second date range if I wanted to. So I could compare certain periods to each other. Also, directly from within inventory, there's an item profiles button, and this does not have to be run on a report either. I can go see this live. And I want to reiterate the fact that we're taking a high level look, 1,000-foot view at these features and tools. I could easily spend an hour on each one of these. So to get an in-depth understanding, make sure you reach out to us. We can do a follow-up demo, and we can even help you arrange some training on some of these. Okay, next topic, auto utilities. If you're not using any of the auto utilities, I honestly think you're missing out. In a perfect world, you should be using all of these as they all work in conjunction with each other. The Auto Min-Max tool looks at your sales data to establish levels. So how much of a product are you selling? What's your lead time from the vendor? How many days of supply do you have to help you establish your par levels? Then Auto PO uses those levels to suggest ordering. Auto TO uses the same information and logic to move product around your organization if you have multiple locations. And Best Replenishment, which is a unique tool to Retail Pro that actually ties purchasing and receiving together. All the auto utilities utilize the same simple wizard format, and here are a few screenshots of what that looks like. So here we're using the Best Replenishment tool. This tool looks at our min-max levels and determines what product may need to be ordered or simply transferred from one store to another, so that we're not overbuying just because one store needs more merchandise when another store may be overstocked on that same product. As you can see, flowing from left to right, the wizard walks you through selections such as what stores to look at, what document types to consider. So for example, if you look at the second screenshot there, I can include and exclude purchase orders. So if I have a purchase order coming up for 500 of a product that may be for a specific sale, then I can exclude that to say, no, I still need to get to my max or my min level for my regular daily stock. So please exclude those purchase orders. You can also set your distribution details. So how far do you want to fill? Maybe you're getting close to the end of a season. You only want to keep your minimum levels. Maybe it's the beginning of the season, you want to go to max, or maybe you want to go somewhere in between. We can also set what our transfer details are. Are we generating transfer orders or transfer slips? What type of PO is coming out? We can apply filters. Maybe we only want to look at certain departments or certain vendors. And then we go ahead, we complete the process, and it gives us this. So after we run through the wizard, you can either take all of the suggestions or pick and choose which items you want by simply marking and unmarking them. So you can see, for example, here, the system is suggesting that I move 2 pairs of Navy size 7 shoes from an overstock to an understock location, but because they only have so many they can give up, I also need to order 4 to cover the rest of that deficit to get that store to its min quantity. But this is all happening automatically by the system. And then the last of what I call the advanced features that we want to look at today is sales targets. So looking at this screenshot here, you can see from top to bottom the different levels of targets that we have available to us. At our highest level, we can create an overall company target for a time period. Could be monthly, could be quarterly, could be annually, or it could be any specific period you choose. Or it could be any combination of those. So we could have an annual plan and a quarterly and a monthly and a weekly plan. And then with those, within those periods, you can break the numbers down, if you look at our second level, to store level. So I can say that of my $1 million and $25,000 in product that I want to sell in 2020, I want my big retail store to do 750,000 of that and 15,000 products. I want my remote store, my smaller location, to do the other 25%. Within that breakdown, in my retail store, among my hats, my jerseys, my t-shirts, and my novelties, I broke down those target amounts as well. It tells me what amount of the plan those are making up. And Retail Pro will even tell you if your numbers don't match, if you haven't allocated a certain or enough of a product or dollars at a level to account for the level above it. Additionally, you can set employee targets. And in fact, you can set only employee targets. So if you didn't want to utilize any of the department or store targets, you could just set targets for employees and run reports to see how they're doing against those targets. In my example, I've said that myself, AB, is set to do 50,000 of the $1 million, and I'm set to sell 1,000 products. And then with that information, as I mentioned, there are several reports that we can use to review the sales targets. Sales targets for employees will even show up on employee performance reports. So here's just one example of what a report looks like. We can see our target numbers per store alongside the actual sales and the percentage of target that we've reached so far for the period. So after 4 months, I've only reached about 15% of my target. So it looks like I do need to step up the sales efforts based on that information. Then our last topic today is planning and open to buy. Inventory is your biggest asset, as we've talked about, but merchandise in your stockroom is tied up cash. So how can you avoid overbuying and meet demand without tying up cash in excess inventory? And not just overbuying, but honestly, what about times like right now, where something well outside of your control has you sitting on inventory that you were planning to sell? Especially as we move now into May, people have bought seasonal items for spring and summer. You know, all of that is stuff that you're sitting on because of something that absolutely was out of your control. So using tools like planning and open to buy can help you adjust your buying strategy for the future. Retail Pro Planning is a sales forecasting, inventory planning, and open to buy software. It even has the option of expert consulting service that helps you evaluate your inventory and purchase strategy to see where you can make improvements. So it's not just a piece of software that helps you plan, but it's also knowledge that comes along with it. It has an intelligent dashboard that's available in the cloud to leverage historical sales data from your point of sale, industry trends, and trends visible in your stores to forecast future sales to help you buy the right inventory at the right time intervals in the right amounts. Now, I want to do one more poll before we take a look at our next steps. And the poll question is simple. What level of planning are you currently doing? And I know that planning means something different to everyone. So the responses that I've included here, your 4 options, are somewhat generic buckets just to give us a basic idea. And I'm going to go ahead as before and just allow a minute or so for the poll results to come in. And I'm actually very curious about this one because of how everyone views planning in their own way. And while we wait, just a reminder to get some questions in. We had a lot of good questions last week. I see we have some good ones already, and I really do enjoy reviewing those with the group to kind of get out of the PowerPoint a little bit and kind of see what you guys have on your mind. Okay, looks like we've got a bulk of people with their responses in, so let's go ahead and close up that poll so we can take a look at the responses. I will say I am surprised like this. I was surprised at the results a little bit in that probably about half of people actually are doing some sort of planning. We have certainly seen many customers who do Excel type planning. We've helped many with things like custom pivot tables to bring data in. And then it looks like a small percentage using a third-party tool or utility as well. Doesn't surprise me that about half of people are not doing formal planning. I think this touches on what we talked about earlier is, you know your inventory, you know what to buy and when to buy it. But I really do think that planning can fit the needs of a lot of customers and a lot of business types. So that's certainly something we would love to explore with you guys. Okay, so before we get into some Q&A, let's talk about next steps. Next steps for our 3 areas. We covered a variety of topics on inventory management, but we certainly only scratched the surface of them. High level, the three areas we looked at were physical inventory, advanced tools, and planning. For physical inventory, it's pretty simple. Use the time that you have now to do a physical, and use whatever time you have going forward to continue to do those counts. Remember, accurate inventory is the difference between profit and loss. Whether you do regular counts or you've never done a PI, we offer all levels of training to assist new users, seasoned pros. We can even help you with inventory analysis and share some best practices that we've learned over our 30 years of doing this. Now, I know we covered some advanced tools and utilities in our brief session here. If you're not familiar with some of those tools, please follow up with us. We could set up a tailored demo of one of them, some of them, or all of them. As I said before, we could spend a lot of time on each of those individual items, and we would love to do that with you. We can help you build a custom training package that makes sense for you. And lastly, for planning, we of course covered this at a very high level. Honestly, this is such a broad and in-depth topic. We would want to better understand what planning actually means to you, what open to buy means to you. We're here to guide you through the options and solutions and help you develop buying strategies as the retail world is changing all around us. And certainly it has been changing lately like nothing we've ever seen before. Okay, so let's go ahead and answer a few questions. As I said, I see some good questions, and let me pull that window up now. Okay, do a lot of people use an outside inventory service? I would say overall no. The bulk of people, I think, do their own physical counts for the reasons that we talked about before, which is you care more about your inventory than an inventory company ever will. Whether they're good or bad, I also hear a lot. I think they just have a stigma that whatever counts they do, because they are doing them so quickly, are just assumed to not be incredibly accurate. Again, I'm not saying that's true. They are very good and very fast in many cases. Before this, I worked in grocery for many years, and I would watch those guys count, and for the most part, they were very thorough and efficient. So the answer is no. A lot of people don't use an outside inventory service, and I think if you work with us and we pull together some of the tools and the scanners, you'd be amazed at how quickly you can do an inventory and how regularly you can do that inventory. Do you guys still support PerCon scanners? I'm sure are people on here right now who know what a PerCon scanner is. It's a relatively old, simple scanner. I believe it's been many years since they even produced them. But the short answer is yes, if you still have them, if you still want to use them. Now the problem becomes computer hardware technology. So being able to get Windows 10 to recognize them, being able to find a computer with a serial port. But yes, if they still have the Retail Pro application on it, you can use them. We can even reflash that Retail Pro application. We still do have that software and that capability. Can auto utilities be run on a schedule, overnight or otherwise? Yes, we can utilize, we've done this with many clients, and this is kind of outside of the box of Retail Pro's capabilities, but we have actually developed our own tools and methods to have them run automatically, even in specific orders. So to say, I want to run my auto transfer report from warehouse to stores every night, but during certain times of the year, I want the web to get first priority over merchandise. Or I always want to have 10% of stock left behind in the warehouse, never take everything I have. So we've built a lot of tools and utilities for that. So yeah, that's a great question. Let's see. For someone who has never used the physical tool, is there a way to only do certain inventory, store selection, or department. Absolutely. There's a way to break up. So within your physical, you have the option of zones. Zones can be whatever you want. So typically the reason you're going to do this is to break up the store. You're using probably multiple employees to count. So it's easy to say, here are the zones you're responsible for, go count them, come back, do another zone. This also just provides the simplicity of, if an error is found in a zone, we don't have to go search an entire store of inventory. We can really zero in on what that is. And absolutely, you can do certain inventory. If you want to filter your PI to start with for a specific vendor or department. So if I carry apparel and shoes, I may say, hey, I only want to count the shoe wall. That's all I want to do right now for timing purposes. And every week we're going to count a different department. Absolutely, you can break that stuff down. I have iPads and scanners I use for other applications. Can I use them for inventory? 100%. So it's really just the reverse of what I said before, was if you get those iOS and Android scanners from us, you can use them for other applications. The flip side is, if you already have them for other applications, you can use them with Retail Pro. Of course, we would need to confirm how old they are, what versions they are, and compatibility, things like that. So the easiest thing would be to just reach out to your account manager and say, hey, I'm interested in the smart scanner. Here's the devices I have. Is this kind of stuff going to work? I have seen, oh, this is actually a great question, and I'm glad somebody brought this point up. I have seen Retail Pro Decisions demo. Is that the same thing as planning? Retail Pro Decisions is not the same thing as planning. It's a business intelligence tool. So think of very advanced reporting with capability beyond reporting, such as doing what if analysis on your inventory. If I increase my stock by 10% next year, what would that do to my sales? That kind of thing. That is a very powerful tool. Love to show anyone a demo of that. I know we've shown demos of that, and Retail Pro certainly has many customers using it. So no, Retail Pro Decisions and planning are different things that serve different purposes, but they're both very, very good advanced tools. All right, let's see, what else do we have here? How do I line up training? Great question. As we said, account managers will be reaching out to you for some feedback, some follow-up to see what might make sense. Certainly, if this is something you want to jump on, you can reach out to them as well. And then, you know, a first step may be that we do some sort of demo to give you a little bit more, a little bit more detail on one of the specific features or some of them, and then we would line up some training, break down what those hours are for you, and put a package together that makes sense. Let's see. Do the sales targets tie into auto POs or open to buy? Not the sales targets within Retail Pro. As I said, they're a great tool, and we can even export and import some numbers there to make things simpler. But at this time, it doesn't have that automatic flow. And that's where we would really want to look at Retail Pro planning, which is not only going to be that target information, but also more detailed merchandise planning and really a feedback and forth between Retail Pro and that planning information to help us at all different levels. Can I override? And we have a few more questions here. This is great. We got over 10 questions, so I appreciate everyone sticking around to listen to them. I want to go through these last three because I think these are also valuable as well. Can I override or manage auto min-max? 100%. You can determine what you want your min-max to be manually. Keep in mind, the auto utilities are really suggestions. So for example, an auto PO creates a pending purchase order and says, hey, I think you should order this stuff, right? This isn't, it's emailing POs off to your vendors just because you click the button kind of thing. You still have full control over the documents, over the min-max. That is 100% your decision at the end of the day. What's the benefit of cycle counts versus a full PI? Another good question. Certainly, a full PI is always a good way to go. But let's be honest, we don't always have the staff, the time to do that, especially when we're in a busy season or a busy period. So cycle counts will at least give us control, and it'll help us manage things it'll help put things in a more manageable situation, right? It's like the old saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So cycle count kind of helps you break it down into those single bites to say, hey, I don't have a full day to count everything once a month, but I have the resources to be able to count, say, 10 different areas and give those tasks to somebody twice a week, accomplishing the same goal. And honestly, any knowledge, any information that you can get faster is better. Kind of tying back to our shrink conversation, even things like the optics of you doing more frequent counts, right? These give people an impression that you have a tight control over your inventory, right? So if part of your shrink, and let's be honest, it is theft, internal or external, it's the same idea as having security cameras. People seeing you with a scanner, with a device, counting all the time, that is a great deterrent as much as it is a powerful tool to gather inventory information. And actually, this is just another one about lining up training, specifically about sales targets. Just says sales targets sound interesting. How do I line up training? Yeah, great question. Obviously, the sales targets are a very interesting tool. I have done some extensive research and training myself on them more recently as they've become more of interest. So absolutely 100%, that's something that we can set up with you. Yeah, and those were great questions. I mean, anytime I can get 8 or 10 good questions is always a good session. Tells me that people were engaged. And then lastly, I just want to say a simple thank you. I hope you enjoyed the webinar. I hope you found our time together to be valuable. Please join us for the additional webinars in this series. I know, looking at the registration, a lot of people have already registered their way all the way down, and that's awesome. For anyone else, please go ahead and register. We're doing them every Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern. Next week is I think going to be one of our best ones, which is we're going to look at Retail Pro Prism. We're going to review some of the new features and some of the things like promotions, which I really think is a wow factor for this version. So I just want to say thank you from all of us here at IMS. I hope that everyone stays safe. I hope we can all get back to regular business soon. It looks like we're moving that direction. So thanks everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.